Hello everyone, I'm Grim, I'm a freelance artist, and I really enjoy storytelling through my art. So, this week I want to talk about how I go about environment design from the perspective of someone who honestly likes character design a lot more. Environment design is something I used to struggle with and find really boring, but honestly, once I had a proper class on it in college, I was able to find a way that I really enjoy doing it. So I want to share some of that with all of you. During this process, I'm going to do a bit more visual design for the Celestial Train setting, so if you have a place you need to design for one of your projects, you should go grab a sticky note and jot down ideas or start sketching with me. First, we're going to outline the process, then I'm going to apply it to the design I'm going to do, and then I'm going to reflect on the design process. So I used to find environment design really boring until I had it framed to me as treating the environment as though it were its own character in a scene. If you've watched my character design video, a lot of this will actually sound familiar, but the way in which it is applied is going to be a bit different since this is for an environment, a place, instead of a character. Like before, the first step of this process is to answer some questions about the environment that you're going to design. First, what role does this environment serve? How does it help or hinder the characters in it? How is this environment shaped by the characters' time and rest of the world, such as weather or animals that live in it? Once all of these questions are answered just with a couple bullet points or extra words, they'll give a nice list of what you should try to incorporate into your design. So let's apply this to the Celestial Trains, starting interior car. The role this environment will serve and how it will help and hinder the characters in it is that the starting car is meant to be more of a welcome mat. It's supposed to give a space for characters to get oriented, almost like a save room in a horror game. It's meant to help characters by giving them a place of respite, but it can offer the potential hindrance that they won't be making any tangible progress on their goals from a train car like this. And how will this environment be shaped by the characters, time, and rest of the world? I think the safety train cars like this will be shaped by the characters as they make themselves at home. Since I don't have any characters to set loose yet in this setting, I want this to be a starter train car. It will necessarily look a bit plain because of that. However, it means it will make a nice base later for me to modify and add to. Regarding how time might affect the train car, I think I'd actually like it to not. I want it to be new, slightly used, but empty. I want it to be very liminal. It's a train car. Since this one hasn't been occupied by a character, it should feel like it's an empty space that people are in temporarily on their way somewhere else. I'm also playing with the idea that perhaps the doors are affected by the things on the other side of them. Plants might grow through the cracks, and there might be dents from creatures who chase someone and couldn't get through. All that good stuff. Thirdly, what should characters think of this environment? How should it make the viewer feel? Characters should be initially at ease inside the train car, but once they realize how empty it is and that this is the empty shell of what will have to be their home on the Celestial Train, it should feel a little eerie. And I'd like the viewer to feel the same way about that. And lastly, the overall style / aesthetic / genre that this train car will be whimsical, a bit of Lolita fashion, and to match the aesthetic I've designed so far. And a bit of a new trait, I'd like it to be very liminal. So, all of those questions answered, that leaves my list of wanted features as weirdly empty but utilitarian. It should have spaces to be made comfortable later. I'd like it to be mostly pristine and new, have a weird door to another car, and obviously it has to be a train car interior. Ideally, I'd like it to include a bar or some sort of food area. I'd like it to obviously be whimsical, and it needs to be a transitional space. Starting out designing the interior of the train, I was definitely a little bit uncertain going into it, but once I found references and started drawing, I found my stride, I think. I ended up going for a more modern train interior, since that would feel more familiar to us, the viewer, but still making sure it was a somewhat dated design and had some unusual elements for a train, which that was stuff like shelves and cabinets that looked like they belonged in a house instead of on a train. While I was looking for references, I also found some really cool images of plants and the ocean and such edited into trains, and I felt like that was exactly the vibe I was looking for later, for when I make more detailed versions of the train and other cars. So I saved those and I kept them in mind for later. The only sort of weird fantastical element that actually made it in was having clouds sort of gathered at the top of the roof of the car, like it was its own little weather environment. I also ended up finding that one of the Clip Studio models I had on hand worked super well for getting me started on the train's layout, which really helped to make sure I didn't forget little things like the overhead shelves for luggage, because that's not something I would have thought to include otherwise. I really don't have as much reflecting to do on this design because it went about as I expected. It also felt really good to just draw a nice environment again, since I don't normally do that, or I'm just not commissioned to draw them in the first place. Not to mention, I also took some time to make some alternative edits of the train with different lighting and some fun glitch effects, which I will show off in the outro of this video a bit later. I think they'll sort of capture the more liminal moments that I was considering with the train. But overall, I'm happy with how it turned out. It matches the other aesthetics I've laid out for the Celestial train, and I think it'll make a really nice base for me to use later if I decide to. And there is your interior of the starting car for the Celestial train. I hope you all enjoyed coming along for that little journey, and if you'd like to learn a little more about this world building project that I've been dabbling with, I've got 2 other videos you can check out. One is an introduction, and the other is a character design for it. And of course, if you have any suggestions for videos you'd like to see either related to the Celestial train or not, leave them in the comments below, or, of course, if you worked on something while listening to this video, like I suggested earlier, you should absolutely show that off. I want to see it. I love knowing that people took the time to draw and work on something during one of these videos, honestly. And of course, if you like any of the stuff that I design, I take commissions. My site to order a commission off of will be linked in the description below. In the meantime, thanks for sticking around to do some environment design and world building with me, and I will see you next week in whatever I decide to make. Bye-bye!